Hey, Small Beans listener, did you know we're in the process of trying to make a movie? It's true. It's called Papa Bear and tells the story of the time my dad came out as a gay furry when I was 17. We're currently looking for investors, creative partners, and talent to attach to the project. If you'd like to know more or to see our script, lookbook, and business plan, please hit us up at allthesmallbeans@gmail.com. Small Beans patrons can also listen in on the whole process by checking out our movie production diary series over at the Patreon. Thanks for your time, and now, on with the pod.
Hey, Adam.
Hey, Abe.
When's the last time you took a bath?
A bath?
Yeah, like pruny fingers. Like,
Ooh. I don't know. Dude, I don't know. A bath?
Right?
Fuck, I don't know.
I can't even think of that shit.
I don't know if I was an adult. And I don't think I've had one as an adult.
I don't think I've had an adult bath.
Yeah, me neither. Not even in the sexy
and I don't.
sense of it.
A nice little swim doesn't count.
No. I've been in like ponds and stuff and like lakes.
Yeah,
and
we've been
pools.
in ponds. You can't prove we haven't been in ponds.
That's right. You can't prove I haven't been there.
But like, I haven't had a bath for a long time.
No, why would? I mean, this is like a whole separate podcast series, really. Just like why baths? No, it's been a long time. Thank you for asking.
They can be relaxing. I did some for sports. That's technically true, right? You know?
Yeah.
Ice baths and whatnot.
Like, well, yeah, the medicinal baths, right? Where it's like about soaking. But like to me, that's like the same as like going in a cryo machine or something, right? Where it's like, it's like, yeah, you got to let this weird thing happen to your body for a little bit and then you're free.
Then you're free.
Yeah.
That's true. Whereas a bath, it's like, I get to splish splash. I'm taking a bath.
Did you have any toys that were like your toys?
I don't fucking think so.
I don't either. Yeah.
I think I was just a little kid, just playing with bubbles, jerking my chain.
That's right. You know who loves baths more than anything else? Parents.
Who?
Fucking parents love baths.
Yeah, what is with that?
I don't know. Like, they don't do it. Why do they think it's so great that kids are doing it?
Pretty weird parents. I'm just going to call
what's
it
wrong
parents
with you?
in general. What's wrong with you? Is it because you want them to be, because like you're like at any moment you're like, I could just put their head down in the water. I could just let it all go away, much like the ghost does in this movie we watched.
Yeah, the ghost does do that.
Yeah, the little girl ghost tries to drown the real girl.
The ghosts' wants were a little, shall we say, complex. Right?
Sure.
Yeah. So Abe sent me a text. I want to say it was last night around 5 or something like that. Yeah. And he was like, dude, Dark Waters, this is a terrible movie. that's the text that I said, I know.
It's a terrible movie. I did not like it. I did not like it.
No, I didn't either. I didn't like it either.
Like The Ring. I don't think most people have heard of Dark Water, but it's actually... It's sneaky that I hadn't even heard of it, to be honest, when you mentioned it, because it's got John C. Reilly in it. It's got Jennifer Connelly in it. And it was like, it's of that era where they were like, hey, The Ring was really good. Little girls are terrifying. Let's make a horror movie.
That's right. Well, and like they kept doing these, right? There was like 7 or 8 of these like specific, cultural remakes that are like drawing on those traditions. And this was like one of the last ones and one of the worst ones.
And this one is also based on a movie in Japan, I think.
Yes, that's
right.
It was based on the writings of the guy who wrote The Ring.
Oh, okay. It's the same guy.
It's the same guy.
That guy just writes, he's like, what if it's like a well or like water's coming? Guy's just terrified of water.
One presumes that, I assume he's from Japan. I might be wrong. If so, it might be like a feature of the climate. You know what I mean? Like it being a more rainy climate. I'm not sure.
It's a little scary.
Or just it feels like, like it has its own cultural value. I couldn't tell you, honestly, because this is actually not my favorite wing of the horror tree.
It's psychological, supernatural horror.
Kind of, yeah. It's supernatural.
A little bit of psychological thrown in there.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think they're mostly synonymous in the American adaptations. They are interchangeable largely in the American adaptations.
So, what do you want? So you showed me this terrible.
So I made you watch it. So you're gonna. I don't know what you're gonna say about this, Abe. But the title, the tentative title. That I wrote for this episode is Dark Water, lackluster thriller, decent drama. Decent drama. Decent drama. A thing you might not agree with. Anyway, I want to start with kind of a broad overview of what it's like to be in the biz. And start with like kind of an obvious sentiment, but that really matters here, which is that nobody wants to be typecast in Hollywood. Like very few people want to be typecast, especially if you're like an artist, right? Like you don't want your thing to be packaged and simply described by somebody else, because it feels like you've been contained in a box that feels too small for your ravishing human spirit, right?
Right. You are the special boy.
Exactly, right. You're Harry Potter, damn it. How can you just be good at potions? You know what I mean? And yet it's not like it's uncommon in film school even to start talking about the type of movie you make as early as like first semester, right? Like we're all doing it. Like we're doing it for ourselves, and we're definitely doing it for other people. Case in point, I remember a certain Abe who was pretty committed from day one at film school to making comedies and introduced himself as a comedy director. And he was not the only person that chose to be a specialist like that. We have other friends and collaborators who I make horror films. That's what I make. Or I have a friend who just makes genre films, as he describes it, right?
I love stories about me.
Yes, Abe used to wear his comedy trilby and his monocle around.
You get it from Comedy University.
That's right.
They give it to you with your diploma.
He's got the comedian's hat. Now, by contrast, and I'm sure this is obvious to all of you, some people deeply resist this kind of classification, probably out of ego. Because again, we're special boys.
You're multitudes.
Exactly.
You're multitudes, man. And that's it's fine to be multiple things. Hey,
totally.
Jordan Peele, right?
That's right. He's the guy who broke out. That's correct. And there are many others who they break out, and I think a lot of those types of people, they don't want to be classified, but also they might not be certain about what they say, like what kind of movie they want to make. Like for instance, I remember a certain Adam Ganzer who made a different genre every single film that he made in film school.
I like it. I like it.
And some genres, it was pretty clear that they were going to work for him, and some it was pretty clear, don't do that. Like, for instance, the young woman at the beach genre, don't make movies like that. Abe laughs because I made a thesis film that was a very sensitive drama about a young woman who is on a date with her rich boyfriend on a vacation, and she thinks he dies, and so she takes his credit card and goes on a spending spree, and sort of discovers the way that he views her as more like an object to be used rather than a person to be adored. And it was just really clear I'm the wrong guy for that, just not the right person for that.
Yeah, no, but I mean, what I respect is the bumping around. Like, to me, it's one thing to know what you're all about and just be like, that's my deal. I mean, I love Carpenter, right? He's the same thing. He's like, they'll pay me to keep making this shit, so cool. But you're my little Soderbergh,
Yeah, buddy.
Like,
well, that's right. Soderbergh.
I like, because you're like, let me push it. What do I think about this when I really, deep down, what does it really mean?
It might be that, and it might be that like I'm always on a search for something that I find unique or inspiring or spiritually meaningful in a genre, and not so much like I really just like laughs or I really just like scares or whatever. Like I don't really care. So I don't know, man. It might also just be, not wanting to commit to anything. There's a lot of reasons. The problem, of course, is that at a certain point, if you want to be a professional director, you kind of have to specialize to be employable. Like that. I mean, it's just simple as that. Like if you want people to recognize your work and hire you for something, you need to have work that says comedy director or cool music video director or works in commercials or whatever, something that is exactly the thing they're already looking for. Because if that doesn't exist, you don't get hired. It's, that's pretty much it. And if you're like shopping around, say like feature films or shopping around for a feature film gig, the question you're going to get asked all the time, because I've been asked, and I'm sure you have too, Abe, is like, what kind of director are you? And oh, so you make comedies? Oh, do you do horrors? Like, and they'll ask you this basically by genre and expect you to have kind of a body of work in that genre.
Right. It's the quickest way to get to know someone when you're
correct.
It's cold reading, kind of.
That's right.
Way. It's like how I'm smelling your butt and I want to see what your thing is. And so you have a good frame of reference from a horror standpoint, so we can talk about all those tropes and like it's that shit.
That's
but it's
correct.
also like makes you feel like you pigeonhole yourself, and that's the thing.
You feel trapped by the commitment of it, and not in this committophobe way. In this like that may not actually represent who I am that well. But the truth is, like, being identifiable, huge part of being marketable, and this is another sort of obvious fact, but like Hollywood is actually kind of risk averse. And because it's risk averse. Oh, really?
I'm an asshole. No, you're right.
And because they're risk averse, they want to know that you've already done the thing that they want you to do.
Yeah.
So it's this weird catch-22. Like Abe knows this. Like I was trying to get into commercial directing for a pretty long time coming out of Cracked. And I kept running into this this catch-22 that made me feel like I was literally in the novel catch-22, which is like, dude, you'd be so great on this commercial. All you need to do is have directed a commercial. Have you directed a commercial? It's like, no, somebody's got to hire me to do one of those first, man. That's how this works. But it is not how this works. It's the truth. It's a real thing.
Yeah, it's you want to hear if even we're like a funny story.
I do.
Short story. It's not just true with directors, it's true with cinematographers. Who, if you go to film school, cinematographers are treated like rock stars. They're like the guitarists.
If they're great, yes.
If they're really good, they're like, oh, you're so fucking cool. You're so fucking cool. But anyway, many of my friends are cinematographers. I don't know why I do this to myself. There's cinematography class. You're pitted with a cinematographer, and one of our cinematographer, he was talking about working in commercials.
Sure.
And he gave the story about how he didn't get a job one time because he was shooting. It was like fucking like Dreyer's strawberry ice cream, right?
Okay.
And they looked at his commercial reel, and he just put in his work that he had done for ice cream already, because he was an employable ice cream commercial shooter.
He's a high stakes ice cream wizard,
and he had chocolate and vanilla, and that's what he put on the reel. He didn't get the job because he didn't have strawberry.
No, get out of here.
Yeah, and it's like you that is a ridiculous thing to have happened. But I also see what, like, if you think like they do in that risk adverse way you're talking about, it's because they were like, well, does he know to like? I don't know anything about lighting.
Does he know it's more red?
Strawberry better? Like and it's just like you look at a cinematographer and say that to their face, and they're gonna roll their eyes and they're gonna be like, I can do fucking whatever. I am not a lamp. I am not a color. But this is what we do to ourselves.
But what are you gonna do about the red?
but it's strawberry, dude.
Yeah, it's so good. I love it. No, it's a real thing. It's really dumb, and it's a real. albatross sort of like hanging around the early part of your filmmaking voyage, and quite frankly, it takes a lot of success as a filmmaker to break out of these typecast roles, and even when you do break out of the typecast with like, some big pivot, then you're kind of like, they want to kind of latch you into that new thing. Like Jordan Peele's kind of a good example of that, right? Where it's like, now he's basically making horror. And not that I don't think he couldn't make a different thing. Of course he could. But like, I think there's a reason why he keeps making horror projects, right? Maybe it's because he wants to. But like, I also think it's probably easier for him to get a horror project off the ground than like his drama now, because that's how this is, man. So enter Walter, and I don't know exactly how to pronounce his last name. I'm going to call it Salles or Salles. It's probably Salles, who is a wonderful Brazilian director. Who makes, intimate and emotionally charged dramas. Lots of them are sort of like road movies. For instance, he made The Motorcycle Diaries, and he made, I think more significantly, Central Station in 1998. They're both pretty good films. Central Station's quite a great film. Have you seen either of those?
No, I haven't.
Okay, yeah. They're like, they're not like heartwarming so much as they are like really... They're keen emotional dramas, and they're coming of age films after a sense, right? Like The Road is a big element of it. And like, it's a person sort of softly changing over time and taking in the human experience. Like, it's that kind of stuff.
Do you know he went to our alma mater?
I did know that. And I think that's strange. But I did know that. Yes. Not strange because why couldn't he be there, but strange that yeah, it's just a funny, like, they never mentioned him. You know what I mean? Like, and he had like an interesting career. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people like that at USC. They don't get mic time, which is weird. In any case, he's coming off the success of two pretty big films. Both of those were like, they made it over here. They were Brazilian films, but they were fairly successful. And then he gets asked to do his first English language film for Hollywood. And it was this movie called Dark Water. And it was going to be kind of a transition to making mainstream films. And Dark Water is part of that trend that we were talking about earlier, which is that Japanese horror film remake that has kind of like a muddy, bleak aesthetic. And it was a thing at the time to get like pretty big named actresses to anchor the film, which previous to that was not true of horror films. So like, Naomi Watts was in The Ring, right? And in this case, what do you mean
though? Like, I mean, the horror films have a long-standing tradition of female protagonists.
But no, of getting famous actors to be in the horror film. That's what I'm saying. Not female protagonists. Yeah, but they're getting like well-known people. Like, for instance, Jennifer Connelly had just won an Academy Award a couple years before, a thing we're going to talk about here. So that was kind of a new thing about this. Like, they're bringing A-list talent to the horror genre, right? So as we said, this is not a good movie. I would say my impression of it, this is before I read any reviews, is like more than anything else, it's just kind of boring. Like it's not an exciting movie for a thriller. It's slow, and it doesn't really give you any true terror or thriller moments at all.
Right.
And when I went and read people's responses to it, the main through line of the criticism was essentially it's relentlessly dull. How did you feel about it when you watched it?
I can get into why, but I felt that way too.
Great.
I felt it was dull.
Mm-hmm. Now
I don't know if now is when you want me to go into why.
I think you should all throughout. I think go ahead.
Yeah, I think the reason it's dull, I think, is that like in psychological terror, I believe that like hope is like your best weapon. Like you build hope, make your character want out so drastically that they can't bear it, right? And then you don't just have a bunch of terrible shit happen to them. You want to make us go, you can do it, and then bash it down again. Build it up, bash it again, rise things to a head. And this movie doesn't do that. It just makes you kind of feel like, shucks, it sucks to be Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah, is called tension. It's what you hope versus what is happening.
I mean, yeah, because it's just like this apartment is terrible.
It really is.
Everyone is terrible to her, and it's just like you can tell that she hates it.
Yep.
And she wants out. So you do root for her because you are, sympathetic and you're human and have a heart. But it's a different thing to like build it story-wise, where you're like, I see how she deals with that problem, and I bet she's going to use that kind of gumption later. We don't get any moments of that. We just see her get relentlessly beat down.
We kind of want her to get to a place of like equilibrium, really. It feels like she's in a slow free fall that speeds up as the film goes along. Mm-hmm. But we never have an idea of like, if only she could move to South Jersey where she'd be happy. There isn't any of that,
Nor is it a movie where it's like the point of the movie is she's gonna beat that ghost,
right. Yeah,
it's totally
escape this trapped house.
Where what I just said is also kind of like a criterion of that kind of movie, where it's like we're gonna in horror, there's usually a monster that needs to be dealt with.
Correct.
And this movie deals with it in a unique way. I will give it credit for that.
This is very much a monster in the house type film, and I'm using the Blake Snyder term there, right? That's like an archetypal story that he describes. Mm-hmm. And I think the bummer of it is the monster is very vague for most of it, and the house feels completely inescapable because they never try to. They never try to get out of it. Yeah, so so that's a pretty good introduction to my next point, which is, so what happened? What happened to this film?
Why?
Why? So, is this movie just out of his wheelhouse, or was there a culture gap here? Did he not? I don't know. I mean, he went to school at USC, so one presumes that he had a pretty decent sense of American culture. That may not be true. The truth is, I don't know the answer to either of those questions. I looked into it a little bit, and I couldn't get a clear answer. But what I do know is that there are some exquisite directing moments in this film. It's kind of beautifully made in a few different ways. If you think of this as a purely fatalistic drama and get rid of the expectation of a thriller. If you're I'm not going to have any thriller moments, I'm just going to watch this sort of sad contemplation of this woman's life, it actually starts to be a pretty decent movie. Mm-hmm. Not great, but decent, and his filmmaking actually supports that. And I want to get into why did that happen a little bit as we go along. So, to start, Dark Water is a templated movie. It's an experience that was, I think, packaged around an expectation of these are the movies that are successful. People know exactly how they're supposed to go. It's an off-brand clone of The Ring. It's by the guy who wrote The Ring. And the things that Salles did that don't jive with or connect with those expectations are actually the things that make him a good filmmaker, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. The first one is, and I think this is really underrated, he gets incredible performances in this film. Really good and really deep performances.
Right. Yeah.
Out of
Jennifer Connelly is definitely good.
She's so good. Yeah, she's really good.
The husband's good.
He's kind of good. These performances are actually much better than we're accustomed to in the horror genre, where people are typically performing the threat or the fear. That's not what's happening in this film basically ever. Jennifer Connelly's character is wounded and very grounded. She's not... there's only words that feel misogynistic to use, but she's not a person who's she's not hysterical. She's not losing her thread. That's not who she is. She's a person who has been hurt, and then external forces are creating an understandable and reasonably scaled paranoia that that is growing and sort of coming out in very human ways the whole way through the film, even at the very end with where it really lapses into spiritualism. She never does the thing you see horror protagonists do, which is the scream. She never lapses into the terror or the dread in that way. She never starts breathing hard and worried about what's going on in the other room. None of that stuff happens in this film. Even though almost every other film you can think of that's a horror movie with a female protagonist, they have a similar background. Where this is a woman who's been traumatized or has been wounded in some way or the other.
Right, yeah.
and they don't perform the vulnerability and the groundedness. So those choices that she's making as an actor are unique. Like, are they starkly unique? No. We've seen people do versions of it, but never with the kind of depth or poignancy that Jennifer Connelly is bringing into it. And I'll give you just a couple examples. Naomi Watts doesn't really even play trauma so much in The Ring, even though she has a little bit in her life. There's very, very little of that. Neve Campbell has a ton of trauma in her life and really doesn't play it in Scream, any of the Screams. Or even Bruce Willis in Sixth Sense. He is a person who died and lost, spoilers, and lost his family and his sense of dignity in his work, and he feels like sort of remote and frozen in his trauma, but not grounded in it like Jennifer Connelly. Mm-hmm. How does that sit with you?
That sits with me because it does make me realize that there is a clear indication of what like her want and her need is from the get-go,
right?
Which is kind of one of the parts I don't like about the film, because all it really is saying is that she is this person who has been diagnosed as PTSD.
Yep.
And she has been, I think clinically, she has not been clinically,
not clinically,
but a lot of people have said that she's paranoid, including her husband.
And she's clearly getting abused emotionally by him.
So the setup of the movie is like, well, let's amp up the paranoia. And so she has, her want and need is that she can raise her child alone, right? That's the whole deal.
Yeah,
I'm going to divorce you.
I'm going to get my life together.
I don't need you.
Right.
And the whole movie, the husband is like, you can't do it alone. Just admit it to yourself. And that's like the crescendo of their relationship,
which is a pretty shitty dilemma, honestly.
It's huge. Yeah. And so she's dealing with that. And the reason I don't love it is because it's like the movie kind of goes for, it kind of says, yeah, I mean, it's kind of true. She can't really.
The abstract
this
math
ghost
of it
here,
right.
And it's just like, well, okay. If I had a ghost, I also would be that way. So it's not a good look, but they do give her a want, and Jennifer Connelly struggles throughout the movie. I think a lot of the like trauma and stuff like that happens in the movie. She's wounded because she's in an impossible situation, but it's more that things just come at her at this movie. And it's just like people don't respect her. She doesn't ask for respect. She just plays along.
She's just
which is
trying
not
to
something we're used to.
Yeah, she's just trying to get into harmony with her environment, really. She's trying to make the best of this bad situation and get her feet under her, which is like a thing you can definitely root for. And I think why it's so frustrating that the movie never lets her get her feet ever. Like it feels like it never gets better. Just like a couple more words about the performance piece of this. Because again, this is like a choice how this character gets manifested, right? If you just like imagine in your mind like all the famous horror performances, almost all of them are to some degree or another indicative. And by that I mean they're indicating the emotion inside. They're indicating the existential dread with screaming, fear, hard breathing, panting, crying, that kind of stuff, right? You don't get any of that from her. All of it's being done with the eyes. And it's very internal, and it stays internal even when the movie wants to externalize it. And that's the kind of thing you would do if you were not making a horror film, but if you were making a drama. Right?
Yeah, that's
like horror is, in fact, the externalizing and supernaturalizing of inner trauma. I mean, at least that's one reading of that genre. And this film sort of steadfastly refuses to make those connections. Because drama is often about animating the inner life through performance. And so
that's right. It's like it has two masters, because horror definitely has, obviously it's a lot about it is shock value and stuff.
Right.
And this movie is playing to, it's like he doesn't want the horror movie.
That's right. It's like he doesn't want to make a horror movie.
Direct it out.
I think that's actually the conclusion, is that he didn't want to make a horror movie, or maybe that he's the wrong guy for a horror movie. Which is sort of where we're going. So you're right on. Jennifer Connelly taking this part is fascinating in its own right, because she had won an Academy Award And a lot of the like critical response to this film is like, why is she in this? Like a lot of people are like, she was too
you
good
don't
for
have
this.
to do this.
Why did she do it? I don't know. I think that's interesting.
Hey, Halle Berry's got to do a Gothica. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Money, money, money.
Maybe it's money. I don't know. I don't know how much money this movie had in its budget. I really like Jennifer Connelly. Like, I just have a soft spot for her. I think she's such a great actor. And that's what made me watch this, is like I just really enjoy her work. And I also felt very surprised that she chose to do this movie, because there's not a lot to it, and I don't know if it was money or what. I'm just very surprised by it. But her acting, fantastic. Now you might be able to say, well, Adam, Jennifer Connelly's a fantastic actor. That doesn't make Walter Salles' work any good. Then I'd have to present to you Exhibit B, which is Ariel Gade, I think, or Gade, I'm not sure, who plays Cecilia the child. She's also terrific in this movie.
She's pretty good.
She's really good.
You need a good, otherwise your movie's dead.
This movie doesn't work if you don't have a great child actor. That's 100% true. And like, I think we're all forgetting that before Haley Joel Osment and Sixth Sense, great kid actors, there weren't that many of them, and they were sort of a rare thing. Like, even just a charismatic kid actor was enough to create a big career.
Don't sleep on Dakota Fanning.
She's after
Dakota Fanning.
She's good.
Yeah,
she's a good actor.
Later.
Like, I'm thinking of like, Macaulay Culkin, right? I think of him as being a likable person, and that coming through as a kid, and that made him good in his roles, but not so much like a thespian, like with like deep rooted emotions and stuff, because that's really hard for a kid to do, quite frankly. And I mean, I say that as a person who directed a lot of kids stuff at Cracked somehow. You just sort of find out pretty quickly that kids have a lot of limitations, because they don't have the same emotional complexity and well of experience to draw on that you need as an actor. And so you can't go to a kid and sort of, explain what the performance is in any way other than giving them something to imitate, because they haven't had the experience a lot of times. That's what makes people like Ariel and or like Bobby, what's her face from the Stranger Things? Bobby Miller Brown, something like that.
Brown.
Yeah, she's amazing, right? As she was a child actor, and she was amazing because of the trauma she's able to access. And
you can always tell it's always experience, right?
There's an experience component, but I think there's also a gift to being able to direct children. I think there is a special talent there, and this director not only knows how to get these performances out of this kid, and like he gets a lot of them and a lot of variety, he knows how to maximize those performances in the way that he shoots her. So like, he has a history of working with child actors. The movie Central Station centers around the relationship between an older woman and a child who she helps to find his father. And it kind of rests on the kid. And so it's clear to me how he got this gig, right? Like, it clearly translates from his previous experience. Why do this? And you can see his talent in the fact that he can get so much and like so much out of this child. Like, you get fear, you get apprehension, you get peace out of her. You get confusion, concern, you get like suspicion, you get you get like fear that she covers with like being a good kid. You know what I mean? Like, those are hard things to do, covering your feelings as a kid. That's hard for kids to do, let alone child actors to do.
Just make it up.
I mean, we both directed kids. Can you imagine asking a kid to do any of the things that you saw in this film?
No, I mean, kids that young. I've directed kids younger than her.
Yeah, me too.
I've also directed kids older, but like when they're that young, it's mostly like, let's make a game.
Yeah, right. Let's pretend.
Let's do a game where I'm gonna beat you at basketball, and now I'm filming a scene with you playing basketball, or I need you to dig, so you're the king of dirt, or that's what the kid said. He's like, I'm the king of dirt. And I'm like, yeah.
Well, and like, a lot of times you sort of have to get the best you can out of the child and sort of figure out what you're going to cut around. You know what I mean? Like that's sort of, and that's the game, right? It's like, okay, what's the best I can do? How much do I need to see of this child? And this movie did not have that option at all, I would say. Like they just didn't have, like, this kid had to be great. And
she's mostly, the movie is Connelly and her, and some scenes with Tim Roth, some scenes with
John C. Reilly.
It's like, it's basically them too.
And we also often slip into her point of view. So yeah, I mean, I'm just sort of restating this point, but I'm trying to do it for emphasis so people understand it.
There's good direction in this. There's good acting.
Yeah, it's really good.
And the drama stuff.
Absolutely. So also the side characters are more complex than they have any business being. Tim Roth's character has a whole sort of a sense of his, like, the weariness of his job as a lawyer who operates out of his car, and a sense of like having seen it all before, but also
he's a fucking Lincoln lawyer.
Yeah,
it's so great.
But also like choosing to get invested in this case, but not too invested in it. Like, that's a very nuanced performance for a part that is really only in the movie for like 10 minutes. You know.
And it's Tim Roth. He's so good at the character stuff.
True.
And so is John C. Reilly.
True. Yeah, he's amazing in this movie as like just a subtly scuzzy dude. Like, he's just a little
subtly. He's pretty. He's at like he's betting on the ponies and not like solving her fucking.
But in like a charming enough way that you don't hold it against him. I would say, like he's willfully ignorant.
Likable. Yeah, but he's
bad.
You're meant to think he's a piece of shit.
Absolutely. Like, he's an antagonist.
He's a likable piece of shit because he's John C. Reilly and he's really warm. And he's like, well, I don't know. He's just because he's a bumbling fool. But he is one of the main. He's like the first one that crosses her desk in terms of like, I'm not going to respect you. Actually, I'm going to act nice in front of you.
Yeah.
But once I have you as a tenant, I'm not going to solve any of this shit. You're going to live in this horrible apartment.
And I'm going to do nothing until it's actually a threat to me. Right. He's a legit antagonist. He really carries the tour stuff in a way that that keeps that movie entertaining when a large portion of it is just touring a bad apartment. It's like, he keeps that stuff entertaining. I think, all these performances are more than their horror trope compatriots would be in a different movie. Like again, think of any movie, even from the time, even ones with actors you like, these characters are never as defined or as richly portrayed as they are in this movie. And also, I think it says something that he got actors of this caliber for this film. Like, they definitely wanted to work with him. They're also not playing it up. They're not playing the schlocky, schmaltzy, spooky stuff the way that you might in a movie like Scream, something like that. So again, all that is the work of a director who knows how to make a drama but not a thriller. The next aspect I want to talk about, I think you'll find kind of fascinating, is the blocking for camera stuff that he does. So every film has, and we've talked about this all the time on the podcast, but every film has essentially a few visual motifs that are kind of the film's language. Like, here's the aspects of film that we're going to play with in this movie that will be a language for meaning. Let's just review some obvious examples. Wes Anderson, in every movie he ever made, uses wide-angle lenses and portrait photography and then stilted blocking for comedy effect, right? Martin Scorsese, he uses constant motion, sometimes soundtrack. He ellipses time and makes his movies feel dramatically intense with those tactics, right? It also helps him to do these long pastiche films where he's like, covering 30 years of a person's life, and we all know those movies, Goodfellas, Wolf of Wall Street, and so on. So the trouble here is that Salles is handed some really challenging constraints by the script, right? He's got, instead of going off on the road, which is what he'd like to do, he's got to work in a shitty, dingy apartment for most of the movie. Right. And he has to shoot it so that it looks shitty and dingy. And the conflict of this story comes from a leak in the ceiling, which I've had, by the way, in an apartment, and it does make you angry, but it's not the most dramatic way of indicating the supernatural underlying problem. It's like,
like you cut to, like I imagine in the screenplay, it's like cut to the leak in the ceiling. It drips.
Right. It's dark and drippy. It's like, yeah, I've had an apartment. So, it's not the most dynamic thing in the world, and it's kind of a stilted environment that he has to work in. And then couple that with everything is constantly wet and muddy and not so much scary as gross. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of a gross world.
It's a gross world.
And so these are pretty serious constraints, and he actually manages to use them to create some really interesting visual language pieces. And they help to underscore the power dynamics of the film. So the first one that he uses is camera height. Camera height is the kind of thing that you never think about, but it dramatically affects how you feel about a movie, because it affects you on a lizard brain level. What it does is it sort of instantly communicates if somebody is more or less powerful. And what I mean by that is the camera over or under your eye line? And if you want to think about that, think about when you were a kid and you saw an adult or an adult was coming over to speak to you. Remember how they used to tower over you, right? They used to feel like giants, and you felt like, oh, they're invincible. They're much more powerful. Like nothing can hurt them, the way you felt about their parents, right? Until you were a little older. That feeling it comes back in an unconscious way when you put the camera underneath the eye line of a character. And then, of course, contrast it with like the way that you now as an adult look down at a kid and see how sort of small and innocent their problems seem, right? How they seem cute and so on. That also is the opposite effect of camera height, right? When you're looking over the eye line, you feel more powerful than them.
That's right.
So, by the way, like this tactic, it's used everywhere. It's not just movies. In fact, video games use it all the time. Right, so like, I don't know if those of you that have played Elden Ring or have played, for instance, something like Ocarina of Time, one of the things that they do to make the game seem fucking awesome is that they'll be on the eye line of your protagonist and then introduce a boss that towers over you, which...
Yeah, like Shadow of Colossus.
Absolutely, Shadow of the Colossus is another one, right? That, again, is a camera height feature, because they could very easily introduce the boss at its eye line, which would dilute the effect of how much impact it's going to have on you as a character.
Yeah. So Jennifer Connelly is a Godzilla to her child.
Right. That's right. So
this movie sounds a lot more.
It's starting to sound great, isn't it? So he actually uses camera height in a very sort of gentle, subtle way to build in feelings of powerlessness related to the ceiling link. Because he was sort of handed by the script, a ceiling leak is like the main indicator. That means that camera height becomes his major language piece. And he uses the feeling of looking down on specifically Jennifer Connelly's character all the time to indicate her helplessness, right? And this happens, by the way, immediately, right? First frame of the film after her flashback, we have an encounter with her ex-husband. And the ex-husband comes walking in the scene, and she's sitting on a bench outside the office of the psychologist's office or whatever it is, or the mediator's office, right? And just simple thing like she's sitting, he's standing. She could have easily been standing outside the office, but she's not, right?
It's power. Yeah.
He towers over her. She never, ever stands up to him at any point. He always looks up at him the entire movie.
And he's kind of tall, so that like they cast a actor who's tall.
That's right. He is a little tall. That's right. So that dynamic never changes. They constantly have him standing and shouting at her, and she stays seated. It's a thing that happens the whole movie. When Dahlia and Cece see her school for the first time, they're actually walking on a street that allows them to look up at this playground. So the school seems imposing to both of them. Even though she's an adult, she still feels overpowered by the school, right? The apartment building, of course, you get that gigantic looking up at it thing, a thing that they continue to come back to even at the very end of the film. The director is very clever with how he shoots wides in the tour scene with John C. Reilly, because he never lets Jennifer Connelly be the tallest person in the frame. He's constantly putting her in the frame with John C. Reilly, who's a lot taller than her.
That's right.
So she seems shorter than him, even though we have a child and we're observing it through a child's lens. We almost never look up at Dahlia, which is Jennifer Connelly's
It's
character.
a great way to do powerlessness.
Yes.
And it's also building a system of like, not system of abuse. I mean, a lot of films have done that kind of thing, but like if you look down on someone and then that person looks down on someone, it's like a Russian doll kind of deal.
Absolutely. Also, and this is the more subtle part of it, there's tons and tons of shots in this movie where she's looking out through the prison of a rainy window, a thing they do all the time, right? Which is a more obvious metaphor. And those shots are almost always over her eye line. Like you're almost looking over her head at the city.
The world is looking down upon her.
That's right.
It gives her the sense of powerlessness. You're absolutely right. And then the leak is up. Everything's up.
It's all built around the leak. That's correct. Yeah. The leak has sort of created an entire language. One other interesting aspect of it is because now he has a problem, right? If that's his language, he has this problem. And it is that he has a mother who's having a constant dialogue with her daughter, and the daughter will seem powerless compared to her all the time if we have a standard set of shots where we look up at the mom and down at the daughter, right? But what they do is, and this is through clever blocking and angle choice, oftentimes they'll end up having Cece at Dahlia's eye level through incidental things or because she comes down for the conversation, right? So like things like they'll have a chat when Cece's jumping or standing on the bed, or they'll have a chat where Jennifer Connelly's sitting next to the tub and Cece's also sitting in the tub, so they're actually eye level. They kind of made them feel more like they're in it together. There's more of a collegial feeling between them than a strictly mother-daughter feeling.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
You do get, because it's like reading a book to her.
Correct.
And you show it that they're at kind of the same eye level.
That's right. And so all this sort of culminates in a specific jib shot that happens at the very end of the film when Cece goes into the elevator after her mother has died. There's a jib shot where she looks up at the ceiling and we realize, oh, her mother is like, here, right? And there's a jib shot that indicates her mother's point of view coming down from over Cece's eye line to look directly at her. And from that, we get that Cece is actually now at peace and that this conflict has been resolved. The danger is gone. Right? So like that's him literally resolving his own language with one camera shot at the end of the film.
That's cool. Yeah, because I'm trying to think retroactively. I'm looking at all the times that we, like even the shots in the tub.
Yep.
Because that's like the climax.
Yep.
Like Ceci is always, she's always like eye level.
That's right.
Like
which is weird when you think about it.
Which is weird because when it cuts, you would expect therefore Jennifer Connelly would be looking up at her. But we're still kind of always doing this top-down thing. But it doesn't feel like it's a surveillance film.
Never.
There are surveillance shots.
Yes.
There's surveillance shots in the elevator.
Right.
Mostly. There's two big ones. But yeah, it's like it doesn't feel like it's high, wide, and dumb, camera angle wise.
Right.
So it's definitely he pulls that thread really well.
Now,
the director.
One thing. So again, this is the kind of thing that if you were Wes Anderson, this would be a loud choice, right? And the audience would feel it and be aware of it. But Salles, again, he's a dramatic director, and so he actually kind of softens the effect of this choice by constantly working in mid-range or longer lenses to sort of undersell the impact of it so you don't realize he's doing it. Again, not the way a horror film gets directed. It's the way a drama gets directed. So, it makes these decisions feel more like their background and, undercuts the tension that he's trying to create visually. So it's the wrong choice for this film, but it's a choice that's really cool.
It's very cool. Yeah. But it also has the added effect of being the hypothetical wrong choice, but also having the benefit that in the system it works. And now you're using a 50 for everything, which is like, for people who don't know lenses, 50 is almost always recognized as the one that matches actual eyesight the best. Like when I mean that, like eyesight in terms of like, we have huge lenses and we also our brain puts in our periphery. We build like things, but when you like focus on something at a middle distance and like look at that thing, what you would say is within your view. I'm talking about what's in your focus. That's like drawing a canvas on a film,
right?
Like on a film sensor, or a video sensor. So it'd be like it's about coverage of the usual input focus of humanity. It also has the additional benefit of kind of having not too much depth of field, but not too little. It's kind of mid-range.
Yeah. And again, it's there's part of me that really appreciates the subtlety of it. And maybe that's just sort of the language he feels comfortable filming in. I don't know. I don't remember his other films well enough to be like, oh yeah, that's just his deal, is that he works in this sort of, this range. But you can see that it clearly doesn't fit the genre. And that's what's so interesting about it. So another aspect of his film work, like his cinematography, that's really interesting is that he's constantly giving us really meaningful frames that they happen organically, so they never feel placed. And therefore you don't realize you're actually being set up for the end of the film. For instance, I don't know how many times, I'm going to say 10,000. I don't know, a lot of times. He gives us glass walls in this film, right? And glass walls are a fairly obvious metaphor, but they fit this movie because of the rain and because of the sort of performance that's being given. So they start to become this invisible barrier that we feel more than think about. Yeah. And again, because of the rain, we get this sense that this woman is drowning metaphorically, but she's also going to drown literally at the end of the film. So that becomes a really important foreshadowing component. Also, there's little things like when she meets Veek, who's the guy that's being played by Kobayashi from Usual Suspects. Yep. Who's the only guy that's actually in a horror film in this movie, by the way. When she meets him, the glass between them has a crack in it. And that crack in it sort of fractures their ability to see each other clearly and gives us a clear indicator of who he is, which is somebody who's, you can't totally trust what he's telling you. Yep. And there's also just sort of effortless switches between points of view in this movie, which is a thing you never see in a horror film in the same way. You don't see like, oh yeah, we kind of switch and hand off point of view in a scene. Usually like a scene, if we're switching point of view, it's because a big murder is going to happen or something. Otherwise, we're kind of with the main character. But in this movie, we're sort of effortlessly handing off the point of view between Cece and Dahlia, which kind of, again, internally links them together. Like they're sort of having almost the same point of view.
Yeah, I think... I didn't notice that at first, but now that I'm thinking about the shots, like playing the movie in my head, like, it's also, I think because his system is a tall system, it's the height of the camera kind of deals with the intention. It makes you are not necessarily at odd angles, but you're not like at eye level or 2 inches above eye level, which is how we shoot most dramas, or scenes in general, where it's like it's not comfortable. And so it kind of forces your brain to think about whose POV might this be because it's at an odd place. It could be anyone's. And that it kind of forces you to think about those, like the point of view switches feel naturalistic, therefore, in that system. I like that.
Yeah. Again, not a thing you see very often in horror films. So another subtle motif that I thought was interesting, this one kind of falls into what we might call the wedding singer category, is that he's using color in a way that's not totally clear, but clearly intentional. So it was a thing after 9/11 to make movies. I knew you were
going to bring up 9/11.
Well, I mean, it's 2004, bro. But it was a thing to make movies feel like they're all one color. That was like basically 10 years of cinema. It was like everything was one color, and that color was desaturated. You know what I mean?
Desaturated. Well, it was blue. Yeah. Let's just call it what it was.
It's blue, or it's like green and brown. Yeah, yes, that's correct. And in horror movies in particular, we got obsessed with what you might call this like muddy earth tone green hue thing that's like sort of like a joyless matrix. That was just the way horror movies looked. So what's interesting is that Salles makes this specific choice to put, I think, eye-catching splashes of like saturated blue, like really saturated electric blue. And it happens throughout the film. So like some examples. Yeah. So some examples. Veek has a bright blue cap on his water tank when we first meet him. Also, he's got a bright blue map behind him. The Hello Kitty backpack, which ends up being sort of a plot point, and I don't know why it had to be Hello Kitty, but we'll go with that. It has bright blue patches on it. There's a Raggedy Ann doll in Cece's room that has bright blue pants on it. There's like a blue light that's coming from like this one area of the laundry room when Jennifer Connelly is like, almost threatened by that one weird guy in the laundry room who never shows up again.
Yeah, it feels like it's just to ramp up the feeling.
Yeah, it's like, is he gonna assault her? No, he's just a weird guy.
No.
But there's like this weird blue light. She goes toward it. What's in the blue light? The backpack. So when Cece freaks out and goes to class, and then she like freaks out and like, draws that crazy thing that she can't control. Then she's told, okay, get yourself cleaned up. She goes in the bathroom. The soap dispensers have this bright blue soap in it. And there's like, it goes on and on. When Dahlia starts having her breakdown, she has a bright blue pillow. When Natasha actually does appear and asks Dahlia to read her a story, she's in the blue bathrobe. It's like the first time the spirit actually manifests. And then finally, when we're actually watching Cece and her dad move into this new place and they're walking away, he's got a bright blue Tupperware container at the very top, which sort of implies they're taking Dahlia with them.
Kind of similar blues, too.
They're almost, they're either a saturated or like a really desaturated version of the same hue of blue, basically.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's also pops that are just there to like break up the monotony, right? Like, I think he was resistant to the idea of like, let's do a post 9/11 film, but I like my read of it is essentially that it's his way of indicating what is the emotionally important through line going on in the film. Like, this is sort of tracing the undercurrent, like supernatural impact to some degree. And he manages to dial up saturation and down saturation to some degree in key moments of tension, which is a thing that, by the way, a lot of films do and you barely think about it. Like, when there's moments of tension, a lot of times in movies, suddenly the colors get really saturated, like you're looking at an alarm, like an actual alarm siren or something.
Or they just contrast with whatever the thing is.
Correct.
And in this case, it's saturation because they desaturate the fuck out of everything else.
That's correct. So, like, what is he explicitly saying? I'm not sure if you can say it's one-to-one, kind of like what was Adam Sandler's deal in The Wedding Singer. I think it's more that we're creating a kind of subjectivity that maps along the lines of the main story, like the undercurrent story. Like, Veek's a liar, and he's covering up for Natasha, and Natasha's seeking out Jennifer Connelly because she wants a replacement mother. Like, all that stuff is connected by this blue splash. And it's subtle enough that it's like, again, it's more of a thing that's happening in the background of your brain than it is a thing that's like clearly a meaningful, indicator.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's not done enough for it to create tension or for it to be a clear indicator, meaning like it would be in a horror film for the most part, but it's enough that it's the way a drama director might do it,
You make a really good argument that there's really good craft in this movie, even though it's boring as fuck.
It really is.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not to some people who are like, I'm sure our films are boring as fuck. And I'm like, yeah, that's, that's fine. But this is one of these cases where it's like, it's almost like it doesn't want to live in its own system. And it makes an appeal to the drama, like it makes an appeal, and all the emphasis and all the work goes into this one aspect of it. And it's not movie wide or movie tight, it's not holistic in the way that it's all cadent and perfectly drawn up together. So
it doesn't all fit.
So right, that's why we go like, this is a forgettable movie, right? Because even though the artistry is there, the director didn't do it all the way through, and I think that that's probably not necessarily his fault. I mean, he should make it his fault. Like, that's the thing with the director, is it's your job to make the best movie. But so he should have made the whole team play instead of just relying on his star, like his star basketball player or whatever, which in this metaphor is, how he approaches the drama. That's interesting. I don't think usually when I see a boring movie, I'm just like, there's nothing here,
All of this is to lead to what I think is a fair question. And that question is, so why doesn't it work? You know what I mean? If this guy clearly has a lot of talent, why isn't it good? Or why did we miss the movie part of the movie? So like, I have some theories. One of them is that I think on a script level, it's not very good. I like on a story level, not even a script level. I think on a story level, it's not the best because most of the gritty supernatural stuff happens off screen in it. You know what I mean? Like that's just not good. And I would say like a building leak in general is not a scary enough like monster to be encountering. Like it's no Babadook, you know? It's not innocuous. It's not innocuous enough to be mundane, but it's not interesting enough to be tense. It's more of like it's like annoying more than it is scary, right?
There's this one moment where I don't know how they did it, if they did it practically or there's some, digital fudgery going on. But the one truly like haunting image to me in the movie actually is in the school.
Which one?
It's when Ceci is drawing and then she's not in control of her hand any longer. And she starts,
when she freaks out.
And it really looks like she does not control her hand.
It's incredible acting.
I wonder
really
if it's
impressive.
like they took like someone and like moved her hand because it really like she's fighting against it. And it's like, it's just very well done. And if the actor, if she did it, fucking hell. And up to that point though, and that's like an hour and 15 minutes into the film. It's
pretty late in the film. Yeah.
Yeah. Other than switching actors for some jump scares where it's like, this is my little girl. Oh no, it's the dead girl. It's the first like supernatural thing in the movie. The rest of the movie scares other than that are like, the water is dark.
Right.
It's spilling out of the thing.
It's the only supernatural thing like that you never.
Yeah.
Even when the actual, dead child shows up at the end of the film, she doesn't look like a dead child. She just looks like a kid.
She just wants a mom.
And then she like, does this drowning the child thing, which, there's mild tension there. Like, I don't want to belittle that, but it's not, it's just not it's not a well-crafted film on the level of like manifesting inner trauma. It's not doing that, externalizing
uninterested in the jump scares. But
there's no jump scares at all.
There are, but they're totally phoned in.
They super don't work.
And I think it's because it's like he didn't care, and he doesn't want to revolutionize jump scares, So and the studio was like, you gotta have like the horror music sting that happens.
I
and
guess
goes,
he seems
gotta
like
be something like that, right?
I mean, to me, I'm looking at what he's really good at and the stuff I think is really good about this film, and I think it's actually antithetical to what would make a thriller work. Like, I think this is one of those really clear examples of this is the wrong guy. Should not have hired this guy for this film, because like the film is too grounded. That's another thing, is like horror films are not grounded like this. Could they be? I guess. But then I want something like Exorcist. You know what I mean? Like Exorcist is a fairly grounded film. And what makes it work is that like when we get into the, supernatural stuff, it goes really crazy with like fairly realistic people. And you're like, whoa, the contrast, right? And that doesn't really happen here.
Yeah, I think that what they're doing is they're like, they got this writer. He did like The Ring.
Right.
Let's get all of his stuff. Let's buy all of his
acquire
properties.
it all. That's right.
And the guy was like, well, this short story wasn't necessarily designed to be made into a movie, but you have the rights to it. So go ahead, like that, like, cause the writing isn't bad as much as like it makes choices that are like not conducive to the genre it feels like it's in.
Yeah, it's right. It's like, I just don't think this should have been adapted at all, honestly. I just think like all the math in it makes sense, like in hindsight for a studio executive, right? It's like everybody, like this guy's works are like leaping off the screen right now. Mm-hmm. They're making a lot of money. We'll throw a little money at talent and get somebody really good in it. And we got this new director who can work with kids. and he's right, like it all adds up, except for the director doesn't make these movies. And again, like I feel like both sympathetic to him and also sort of not sympathetic, because it's like I get he probably didn't want to be boxed in. There's probably a part of him that's like, I could make a horror film, why couldn't I, And yet there's a part of me that knows, well, I've tried dramas a bunch of times and they're hit and miss.
Right. And there's other stuff in this movie that feel lazy. Like, as much as there is good drama in this and the basic setup about like Jennifer Connelly trying to, find balance in her life.
Yep.
I did mention I have a problem with that. She never tries to take control. I understand that that's not what this movie is.
She never can get her head above water. Never. As a metaphor here, right?
I'll just say that if you watch this movie, all the things in the movie you're meant to think are gaslighting her character, like she's paranoid, PTSD, incapable of ruining her life, turn out to be true. Right. And that's kind of a fucked up message about victims. Tim Roth comes in and cleans up basically everything because he's assertive and a man. And that's like, it's not a good look, but I understand that it's trying to occupy other things. I've had this conversation about the new movie Blonde. Have you seen Blonde?
Didn't watch it. Is that the Marilyn Monroe movie?
Is going to town on it right now, currently, as we record this episode.
Okay.
Very similar kind of situation, and I won't talk about it. I just think it's a constant issue. But it's like there's also weird choices that this movie makes that I laughed at and I called out, because he's like, the idea that John C. Reilly, when Jennifer Connelly calls and says there's a leak and it's really bad in my apartment, and John C. Reilly as a landlord, not calling a super or a plumber, like that's just straight up illegal. Action can be taken again. She doesn't.
Well, is it?
Say,
you're right that it's illegal, but does that mean for sure that she would do that?
Oh,
what I mean?
You're right. That's what I'm saying is like, it seems like basic stuff. Like no action is taken on the kids who stole a key to an apartment. They just say,
right. That just keeps going.
That's just a thing that we can't do anything about. It's like, no, you can. You said who did it. It's this idea that all these things are powerless, but they almost like fudge reality. Like, they do nothing literally when they hear the kids upstairs. They're like, if we just went up there right now, we could get the key back, but no one does shit.
It's a very inactive film. I totally agree. It's very inactive. And when it does start to resolve those things, it does it in a way that makes her still feel inactive. Like she hires an attorney, one she didn't pick, by the way. And then like he does most of the stuff and she kind of withers under the stress of it. A thing that happens in life. It happens in life.
That's true.
But that doesn't make it good for a movie.
That's I agree with everything you just said. It's crazy though. This movie, Jennifer Connelly dies and becomes ghost mom to this ghost girl.
Right, that's right.
Little ghost girl.
For all eternity.
So this is an insane movie. Like Jennifer Connelly's just put through the ringer and she just accepts it. Like that's what it feels like
to
from the
save
outside.
her child in theory, but I think that was actually really muddy, like pun intended. It was really unclearly, like the handoff there was very like, so she's doing this to save her daughter's life, and like there's no version where like just come and live with us, ghost. You know what I mean? Like no, like why not negotiate this if the ghost isn't intelligence? I know that sounds dumb, but why?
Yeah. I mean, don't know. I guess I care, but I'm just like not feeling like she cares. Which I understand that is like blaming her for the
totally
like, blaming the character for the problems that like she's not
that the writer
being a
for it.
Protagonist like we expect, where she's active and takes control of her destiny.
It's a bad
it's not that.
Script. I mean, it is. It's not a good script,
but it's hard to watch in that regard.
I agree, and I would argue Salles kind of failed to sensationalize the elements that were given that were sensational, and even everything about his aesthetic underplays the sensationalizing. Like he's actually going the exact wrong direction. I mean, like, and again, I'm sorry, man, you've made some good films, and I'm not here to judge you. I just, like, it's clear to me that this that something in you was fighting making this movie.
Fighting making a complete movie. And maybe the writing was taking itself down a path that you just didn't want to go to. And you're signed on the movie anyway.
Who knows? Who knows? Maybe it's for money. I mean,
but I really do believe that even if you don't want to make that, like if you're going to get paid to make that movie, you make the movie good. You don't do your other thing. You know, you
right. You don't fight the movie.
No, I wouldn't want to direct this, but I would to get work. You know, so maybe it was that kind of situation.
Well, you and I have been in situations where we made things that we disagreed with, and to varying degrees of success. I don't remember you or I ever saying, I'm going to make a different movie than this is.
No, you just don't. It's not done. And I'm not saying that he did it this way, but he stuck to his guns because I think it was like the comfort factor. And the horror stuff, which was there and kind of the reason that you're expecting the movie to be a certain way, is non-existent and so therefore feels boring. But there is good craft in it, and he's a good director, I think. He just failed at this simple assignment to me. Maybe it's not so simple. Maybe I'm making that,
I don't know how. I mean, like, again, here we are from the vantage of, basically 20 years later. I don't know. I don't have an immediate solution to how to make this good. Like I was thinking about it while I was like watching it because which is every time we do a Directorpiece theater, it's the result of a hunt for a movie that kind of an aspect of a movie that captures your mind. And I started to know that I was going to do this one when I kept being like, why are we doing
what's going on here
movie this way? And then like realizing I don't have a solution for him either. Like I don't see the obvious thing because when I see the obvious thing, I think you're not the best director. Or like I don't know.
That's where your brain goes, right? Because other people have directed movies,
right? And they figured it out.
And been fine. They figured it out, yeah.
But this one,
I think
I couldn't figure.
Task.
Yeah, it feels like that to me. I might be wrong. I didn't get enough. I didn't get any juicy information on the making of the film that changed how I viewed about it.
Like he was taken over by the studio to force to do stuff.
No.
Yeah, there's always that case. I think that's probably the big takeaway. This movie should not have been made.
Well, it really undercut his career too. Like he made docs and stuff after this, but he really never got back to making a Hollywood feature.
He had a shot to do Hollywood for a bit, and it just made him seem like he's not right for Hollywood, which is not necessarily true. If you, I don't know, give him a movie like What Lies Beneath or something,
Yeah, maybe that was the thinking, actually, because that's a horror movie that is a pretty grounded drama. I don't know. Yeah, it's not clear to me, but when I was looking through his subsequent career, he basically stopped making Hollywood dramas, Hollywood films at all after this. And he made some, did segments of larger productions, and then he did some documentaries, and I think he did a couple other Brazilian films. He did the film On the Road, but I don't think On the Road was I think On the Road was like a beat writer thing. Like it's based on Jack Kerouac's novel.
Oh.
So it's the one with Kristen Stewart. Remember that Kristen Stewart was in that Beatnik movie? He did that one, which is a road movie.
That sounds
so he's done some stuff, but
terribly fine.
Yeah. He did some stuff. It's just, this was not his greatest moment. By the way, Dark Water's 2005.
2005.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's damn. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
You got to do something though. You got to figure it out. Otherwise, you got to find a way to write around it.
I don't know what I would do.
What the fuck are we doing?
Yeah. I mean, I don't. But it's like, imagine if they got you to do a period piece drama, Abe. You know what I mean? Like they're like, okay, you're gonna go back and do like a fucking Thomas Hardy novel. Like we're gonna remake Portrait of a Woman, and Abe's gonna direct it. You know what I mean? And like that, it's either that or you don't direct something, right? Which is, I mean, on some level, probably where he was. Like, what do you fucking do with that?
I'll take the job. I don't know exactly. The job,
you take the job and you roll the dice
about that. I'm gonna be like, don't say that, even though everyone should say that.
Right.
It's the right thing to say. I shouldn't direct that.
But you'll still do it.
need to pay rent.
Therein lies the problem, right?
It's such a conundrum. Yeah. One of my favorite moments in this movie is that as John C. Reilly casually tours the apartment before they become tenants. And he's just trying to make it seem like it's much better than it is. He's like, look at this $1 million view, and it's like shitty. It's like, look at this table. There's a kitchen table that just disappears. It doesn't like lay flat. Everything is fucking broken. And one of the ones that he says is he goes to, and it becomes a plot point later. He goes in the bathroom and he knocks on the safety glass and he says, "Unbreakable shower door."
Yeah.
And so you think it's set up. Oh, so that's bullshit too.
Right. He does say that. Like, I remember that.
You halfway expect him to hit it and it to break, like some like fucking Elon Musk shit.
I remembered him saying that because it was so weird. It was such a weird thing to say.
It comes back. It's a necessary plot point for like she can't get to her child who's being drowned by the ghost because it's unbreakable shower door,
bulletproof shower door.
Also, that doesn't exist. I'm sorry.
Right? What is this horse shit? Yeah, exactly.
The smallest amount, the tiniest person could rip that door off its hinges because it's like a piece of aluminum.
It's on rollers. Shower doors are on rollers. What are you talking about?
Just shake it a few times.
It's not a medieval gate, bro. Yeah. It doesn't need a fucking winch to lower it and raise it. Yeah, exactly.
I'm outside of a glass case of emotion. It was very...
That line was...
I laughed at that.
Really stupid. I remember hearing it and being like, that's dumb.
But it comes back. It's the one thing
that's
we're
why
supposed
it's
to...
dumb. Because it shouldn't be a thing that comes back. Anyway.
Oh my god.
No proof was offered either. It's just a statement. No proof. And then it's a fact later.
Oh my god, I love
it. I hope you were okay, sir, when I made you swim through the dark water here.
Oh, I'm more than fine. I've seen my share of movies. Yes, movies. We should come.
I just I want to have sympathy for directors who it's like, man,
I do too.
I love you, man. I can see you're good at your job. This just didn't happen for you, you know.
Yeah,
it's a hard job. It's
hard.
If it was easy, they wouldn't pay so much. You know.
That's right. I got a question for you.
I'm so ready for whatever this is going to be. I'm so ready.
Do you think that 9/11 caused blue tinted movies? Because he said it a few times. You're like, it's 9/11, post 9/11 movie, so it's blue tinted. Or like, I just want to.
I think. Thank you for asking. Definitely yes. No. I think the trend started before that, right?
Time.
Well, no, it started with Saving Private Ryan and The Matrix and a few other movies that were super monochromatic.
Well, I would argue it started with the digital intermediate, which was "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?"
Where Art Thou? Exactly.
And then people were like, "Let's just put Photoshop filters on this, Instagram." Wham.
I remember Saving Private Ryan felt like a leap forward in film because it was
the bleach bypass process.
Yeah. It just dramatically changed the way that you felt about it, the image as a whole. Like it felt like we really got into a new era. Yeah, and then and Spielberg kept doing it. Like Minority Report had like sort of a washed out aesthetic like that.
It's a cool aesthetic.
Yeah,
it also works with Spielberg because he puts big lights behind actors to get this plumage of glow. So and it exaggerates the glow because literally the silver nitrate is being ripped out of the emulsion. But the bleach bypass look had been done since movies in the 60s, man. That was all over the place. Of course. And then went away.
He didn't invent it.
And then Spielberg repurposes this thing and just causes it to be like, yes, film should have like a look. And then we got stuff like Traffic and
Traffic is so good.
And we got Matrix even to some extent.
Yep.
Although that's not that desaturated of film. It's just very controlled and black and white and green.
Traffic went so far too with like the processing techniques to get its look that I feel like it just sort of opened the eyes of like, oh, and people like this? Oh, we can go way further. But I do think that this sounds very dumb and I can't prove it. I do think that a lot of the moodiness that was put into films subsequent to 9/11 that was expressed through color is emerging of that trend and the historical events, because you think about movies from other countries from the time and they don't. They're not
as... you think 9/11 caused blue tinted movies?
Yes, is the answer.
Yes.
Although again, I have to cite Enemy of the State, a movie that came out before.
Well, I'll also mention the Harry Potters. They're the biggest offenders, right?
But those are after 9/11. After 9/11.
Yeah, but they're not American.
I don't know, man. They're big budget studio pictures.
Right in the comments. What did 9/11 do? What was 9/11 all about? Summarize 9/11 in the comments. That's what Abe wants you to do.
Yes, that'll be our Chipotle question of the week.
Still waiting for that money, Chipotle.
Chipotle, we got a segment just for you, so bring it in.
We're waiting for that check. You know, we've been doing this for a while now.
That burrito-shaped check.
But we'll just keep calling you at Chipotle at chipotle.com.
Family restaurant, Chipotle.
Yep. And while you're at it, it would be really cool. Speaking of money,
which we always are.
I'm always about the money.
Yeah, yep. He is.
And so here's what I want to say. Patreon.com/smallbeans. You're probably on it right now. If you are not, hey, throw us a few dollars. We like to talk about films. We like to talk about video games. We're just a bunch of casual people. Enjoy your parasocial relationship with us. That's what we want. We want to be your friend from afar. But yeah, if you like the cut of our jib and like our conversations and topics, go on over there, throw us a few dollars. We got a lot of shows.
We'd sure appreciate
things to like, so you take your pick. Small beans for life, yo.
That's right. We're going to keep doing it till the sun explodes or, till I bring up dark water again and Abe's like, I quit podcasts. One of those two things.
Retiring. Damn, has anyone ever retired from podcasting?
I think Rush Limbaugh did.
Damn it, but that doesn't count
because
he's like, he has a show. It's not like, I guess it is a podcast.
That's all he had.
He also died. I just think it would be such a cool move to just one day announce, I'm never doing another podcast. I'm retiring.
I feel like Joe Rogan's going to pull that off in our lifetime, right?
Jesus Christ.
I feel like he's going to. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. And he's going to be like, and then he's going to guest on some podcasts.
But he's not going to do his own podcast. That's right.
Well, yeah. But I mean, I just think it's, look.
Yeah, this is actually a segment of our upcoming project, Roganomics. Where we just talk about all things Joe. Just catching up on the Joes.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I don't know, Abe. We can leave now, right?
Joe Rogo to go.
Please.
Please stop recording.
I am drowning now. I'm drowning, Abe.
Yep. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the Small Beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.